Okay, there we go. All right, fantastic. Hi, everyone. If you're already here and waiting, we're going to take a few minutes and let people meander their way in and get started in just a few moments. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know you're here. Let us know you're excited. Tell us how your day is, if you're enjoying the other panels. Ooh, sorry, I just hit a button. Ooh. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, just feel free to say hello. How are my panelists doing today?
Pretty good.
So, have you been in any other panels, like watching anything? Anyone that has been especially engaging?
I got spontaneously thrown into the head ref one today, so that was fun.
Oh, that's
like literally a minute before it started.
Love
I was in there though.
Did you do great?
I think I did great. I don't know. That's up to the people who listened, I guess.
Getting pulled last minute to ref. That's very Quidditch.
Yeah. Plus, I don't even know if you were there. I don't believe it. Oh, thanks everyone. Oh, that's so sweet.
Okay. Just so for people in the panel watching, if you wanted to chat with us, if you haven't changed already, change your chat feature to all panelists and attendees if you want to like communicate with everybody. Otherwise, the standard is just going to go to the panelists, which is fine because we get to see it, but everyone else won't. So I recommend changing that feature. We are going to start in just a minute.
To be fair, if we're talking about the one that was at 7 a.m., which we are, I would not have been awake enough to be useful.
If it helps, it was at 10 a.m. my time and I was barely awake enough.
I woke up to listen, but it wasn't any more than that. It was really good though. I enjoyed watching you guys.
Okay. We are going to hop right into this. So welcome to More Than Just a Body on the Field. I'm Lindsay Simpson. I am your moderator for the event. We have these lovely panelists here with us today. As your moderator, I just want to let you know there will be the slideshow up through the entirety of the presentation. And most people would like be in college and see someone have a presentation that just lists what they're saying out loud, which is exactly what this is, but that's intentional. That way, if anyone is coming in or out of this, then they can see what we're talking about. And then on top of that also, so if all of my panelists are answering a question, I don't just read it once and then they forget what it is or whatever, so they can refer back to. So I don't want anyone judging my PowerPoint, which is just gonna be the questions that I'm saying out loud. But that's why we do it. Welcome to this panel. We're gonna hop into it and our panelists can introduce themselves. You can just go in like name order on the slide. So.
Hey guys, I'm Jeanette, she, her pronouns. I am currently the coach of the Detroit Innovators and currently co-coach of the Ohio Apollos. Previously also managed the Detroit Innovators. I started on Grand Valley State University and did various positions there. I'm also currently the photography manager for MLQ. So if you're a photographer, hit me up and we can maybe start getting some photos from you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Heald. I started my Quidditch days at Kansas. I coached Kansas City Stampede for a summer. I was a part of the national team in 2018, 2019. And I am since moved to Ohio and am attempting to play Quidditch in Ohio. But yeah, sorry, Lacey. Cleveland Riff, it's recruiting season, come play. Yeah, it's me.
Hello, I am Ray Hopkins. I use they and she pronouns. I have been playing since 2011 and reffing since 2011, head reffing since 2012. I have refereed all over the US, a little bit of Canada for Global Games, which I am wearing the shirt for right now. I have worked for MLQ when it existed in the West, and I helped run NorCal Quidditch Conference, and I was a USQ referee proctor for a few years.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Fabi. I am currently the USQ marketing and PR manager. I've played kind of all over the place, mostly in the South, most notably with Terminus, did a year abroad in Spain. That's why I'm wearing my Catalan jersey. And I also played with QCB, then injured my shoulder, and I haven't played Quidditch in 2 years. I use any pronouns, mostly they or she.
Hi.
So, yeah, that's me.
Hi.
Oh. I think I can mute her. There we go. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so we are going to hop into these questions. Yeah, feel free to send questions into the Q&A as we go on. If they are relevant to like what we're talking about, I'll throw them in, but if they're not, we will answer them at the end. Yeah, that's it. We'll just hop right into this. So how has your gender identity affected your experience in Quidditch? We'll start with Rachel on this one.
Yeah, so I would say that being a woman in Quidditch has affected the way that I think about strategy a lot, especially when I first started playing the traditional unmarked chaser role and wanting to kind of go outside of that. Versus like when I played basketball in the past, it's kind of like I'm large, I'm going to be on the block. And with Quidditch, you have the opportunity to play in a lot of different roles. And so it was interesting being a woman and trying to transition to another part of my game.
Awesome. Phoebe, if you want to go to you.
Yeah, so when I started playing Quidditch, I was still sort of discovering my identity. I've mostly identified as female, I guess, or like let people perceive me that way when I started playing. And then I noticed the big shift when I was in Spain. It really affected how people, like, I noticed that in Spain, they were a lot more open about accepting people of different genders, and it made me really feel seen. So having that experience really made me sort of open up with my teammates more and pushed me to sort of chase sort of a more leadership role in my teams and like be more proactive when I was playing rather than just sort of crossing my arms and feeling annoyed that, you know, my athletic ability was not being seen.
Awesome, thanks. And then Ray, tip to you.
Yeah, so similar to Fabi, I started playing as a woman. I hadn't yet done that gender exploration that led to me identifying as non-binary. I came out a few years ago. So mostly my experiences have been more like a woman in Quidditch. And I'm very feminine presenting with my gender. So yeah. But Quidditch did give me like the experience to like, and the space to explore my identity in like a safe environment that I don't really have in other places. So that was really nice and just really affirming, especially when I came out.
Awesome. And then Jeanette, we can go to you to round this question out.
I think being a woman in Quidditch and in any sport really, you're kind of looking at it in two different ways. I've seen with myself and a lot of people that women are kind of placed on the e-board, and then we have the men on the coaching staff. And it's just, that's always like, that's how I was. And then kind of like, I've done a lot of things. I'm kind of incorporating like 5,000 different parts of Quidditch that I'm starting to realize, am I doing that because I want recognition? Or am I doing that because I actually want to do it? And because being a woman on the pitch, you don't really get that recognition as you do as a photographer, as a ref, as a tournament director. And so you start kind of realizing that and recognizing it yourself, talking to other people when you're a woman and be like, oh, I think we should implement this strategy. And I remember a coach at Grand Valley who like love him, but like he was like, oh no, I don't think that'll work. And then you have to then think about, is he saying that because I'm a girl? Is he saying it because he actually thinks it doesn't work? So there's a lot of the second guessing, I think, that comes into being a woman in Quidditch.
Yeah, it's like painfully true. And I do think there's a lot of females that are wanting to take the step and to get more involved with the logistical side of things because they know there's going to be a space for them there. And that aligns with anybody who just isn't a man, because just walking on the field as a guy in the sport just kind of gives you a leg up on from the start. So let's move on to this. We're gonna start with Rachel again, because you've already talked about your basketball experience. But do you think gender experiences in Quidditch are different from other athletic communities, and like how so?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing would be correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like the first time we've taken a sport, like a mixed gendered sport, and made it competitive and continued that. I mean, I think about whenever I've played like co-ed basketball, you know, you may have your frustrations, you get the people that don't pass you the ball, or they like pass you the ball too much because they're trying to be nice, and then like they're just not playing with you like they would play with anyone else. And so, but that's something that you go play in a rec league and you can forget about it. Versus in Quidditch, it's something that needs to be addressed because we're continually playing the sport, and you can't just ignore those things.
Agreed. I don't know what the other three panelists' background is in sports, so you can speak to this at whatever level you'd like to. But let's go back to Jeanette for this one.
Yeah, I played sports growing up all throughout high school, played basketball, volleyball, track, you can kind of name it. I played it at a small school. I think the difference is that being on just a woman's team, you never feel like, you kind of feel like an equal. You're all on the same place. You know, you come from the same background. And then you come to Quidditch and the guys are kind of like, oh, we have the big tackles and you should already know how to throw and you should already know all this stuff, when like realistically, unless you come from a sports background, you probably didn't learn how to throw. You probably didn't learn how to tackle. So I think that's the biggest difference coming in, is that you're not coming into a sport that everybody shares that kind of similar perspective coming from the same gender. That's what I've realized. And then I also think like having it as a mixed sport at my school, women's sports weren't very popular. And I've noticed it's Quidditch, so there's only so much popularity you can get, but like it's become a little bit more popular and you're able to recognize the female athletes also.
Awesome. That's a great insight. Fabi, let's go to you for this one.
Yeah, I've also played sports my whole life. I played soccer. In Venezuela, we play competitive kickball. And I also play tennis. I feel like I need to like explain that it's competitive. It's not like playground kickball. It's like a thing. It's a baseball country, so boys play baseball, girls play kickball. I was kind of put in kickball. And so again, like the other panelists said, like I feel like you get seen a lot more and respected a lot more when your entire team is sort of in the same gender, in the same sort of side of like the patriarchy, let's put it that way. And you know, coming into Quidditch, it was really strange because I felt like I was always like a good athlete, and I've always been that sort of like jockey, tomboyish sort of person. And then you get thrown into this place where like I had played like pickup soccer with boys, and like there is like Rachel was saying with basketball, like that same issue of like people don't pass to you, and then like you do one good play and suddenly all the balls are coming to you. And then coming to Quidditch, it was like I almost felt gaslighted because I was suddenly like feeling like, am I not a good athlete? Like have I been lied to my whole life? And you know, it was very jarring because I felt like that sort of power that like being an athlete that you get from like being on these teams, and like the camaraderie sort of got yanked away from me a little bit. And even like playing tennis, which is a one-on-one sport, it's very interesting because you don't get that's like same team support, but like I would practice with like boys because, you know, I would be put at a level where I was probably like 13 and I was playing with like the 11 or 12-year-old boys. Like they were a little bit younger, but our levels matched. And you know, the coach saw that and they would like put us against each other. And I've always felt like, yeah, like I can do as much as like a dude who plays sports. And then, you know, coming into Quidditch, I was like, oh wait, what's happening? So I don't know. That's one like big thing that happened to me.
Awesome. Ray, if you want to round this question out, please feel free.
Yeah, so unlike everyone else on this panel, I have had no athletic experience prior to Quidditch. I did marching band in high school, I did art, I did band, a lot of band, I did speech and debate. I didn't do any athletics other than marching band, which wasn't competitive at my school. So I didn't have a foundation of women's sports coming into Quidditch. And I honestly probably would not play a single gender sport. I enjoy competing against people of different genders. And I also really like that like my non-binary identity is recognized in Quidditch to at least some extent. So like I wouldn't go to a single gender sport. I enjoy the unique challenges of competing against people bigger than me, for example. And like Jeanette was saying, like I had to learn how to run, I had to learn how to throw, I had to learn all of these basics. And I'm not a bad player now. Like I'm okay. I'm not very good either. So just being realistic. And so like I've really found joy in competing at like in a mixed gender environment.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think for me, the biggest difference is playing on like an all women's basketball team or track team or whatever in high school, and just like automatically, like I was tall and just like automatically accepted as like an athletic member of the team, and like it was easy. And then I came to Quidditch and it was like, now I have to fight to prove that I'm an athletic, capable member of this team. And that's a huge transition that I didn't really expect to be a part of my life when I went into it in the first place. So we can move on to our next question. Quidditch rules promote it as we're a gender inclusive sport, but there's a backside of that there needs to be rules to support it as a gender inclusive sport. But what do we think it's actually is inclusive in practice? We'll go back to Ray for this one.
I think if you compare it to other athletic communities, I think it is more inclusive than other sports. I don't obviously have the experience to speak to that. Like I just talked about how I wouldn't play a single gender sport. So I think like compared to other athletics, is more inclusive, but that doesn't have to be our bar. Like we can always aim higher and higher and higher for how inclusive we are in regards to gender.
Awesome. We can go to Jeanette next.
So yeah, we are promoting it, you know, 4-max rule. You have to have, you know, some people from a different gender on the pitch at all times. To me though, it depends on how your coaches utilize it. When your coaches are only doing the minimum because you came on and you're a woman, and so they're like, oh, you go into this specific slot, in which like I think we really need to start changing that like idea of, do we only need to have 2 of this specific gender on the pitch at one time, or do we need to adapt it and look at, wow, you're a good chaser, you're going to go in the good chaser row, you're an okay chaser, you should go in the okay chaser row. You know, like there's different ways that we can adapt it. We don't have to just have 4 men on the pitch and then they're like, oh, here's the extras, we have to put them on. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed, that like we're inclusive in the rules, but are we inclusive in the like putting it out there?
Awesome. Let's switch to Rachel now to give her take on this one.
Yeah, I really like what both Ray and Jeanette just said, and kind of going more off of Jeanette, I think that maybe the way that different genders like potentials are perceived is not inclusive, and it's that having to prove yourself, and even then if you prove yourself, I think that depending on how you're coached, and how your coaches perceive you, they might, because of your gender, like your potential is only here. And so why would they commit resources and time to you? And I think that that is a big part of, like, yes, we allow genders on the pitch, but do we actually want them to be there? And do we want to fully utilize everyone on our team?
Awesome. Phoebe, you can round this out with any additional insight.
I mean, I fully agree with what everyone said. I think that we need to stop thinking of, like, I think a lot of coaches and sort of team leaders think of the max four rule as like another handicap from Quidditch. And I think that we need to stop thinking of, your teammates and your players. We are assets to the team. We're not a handicap that the rule book is throwing at you that you need to work around. Like, we are team members. We're here. We're all aiming for the same goal, and the fact that we're not seen that way and we're more like, it feels sometimes that people are looking for ways to get us out of the way rather than to play with us, and you're losing so many valuable assets because of it, and your team could be so much better if you just like invested the time and energy. Like my improvement in playing has only come when I've had coaches that look at me and they go, oh wait, I see the potential, let me like exploit it, and then like I get better, the team does better, and it's better for everyone. So there's literally no point in like still thinking that it's 4-2. It's not. That's not the rule at all.
I think when we talk about inclusivity in this sport is if we were to take away the rule in the rule book about gender, how many teams would still use their female and non-binary players? And I think many of those, like many teams would not. And that is would in theory prove to us that we are not where we could be when, like, if options were presented. That's something that I think about a lot, and it eats at me. But yeah, anyway, moving on. What role do you think gender plays in gameplay strategy? Jeanette, we can start here.
It depends on the team, I think. First, like, if you're coming in to college, my experience with college is a lot different than my experience with clubs. So I think in college, it's, oh, we're going to throw the 2 people on and the 4 people on. And there's kind of that, that in between. In community, shout out to Nathan Digman. He was the first person to ever actually utilize me and like saw the potential, I felt like. So I think in gameplay strategy, you have to be willing to listen to your women and gender nonconforming players, not just the big men that thinks they know everything, and listen to them and utilize them. Know that like the most powerful player out there can be the woman player. Like, you have to utilize them and not just use them as the female beater. Start using them as your beater. And I think that's the biggest thing with the women.
Awesome. Let's go to Ray next on their take on this.
Yeah, so I think I'm the only one on this panel who isn't a coach. So, I'm a player and a referee. So I was really lucky my second and third years of Quidditch to have a coach that invested in our down roster players and our players who didn't have as much sports experience. Like, we were a community team, we kind of took who we could get. And so I spent hours and hours and hours with my coach and my teammates in Rangsdorf Park by the light of the tennis courts, like just throwing balls back and forth with them, critiquing my form. I mentioned earlier, like, I had to learn how to run. I didn't know how to run. You think you know how to run, and then you start trying to play a sport. And like, I was really lucky to have that really early on in my Quidditch career. And so the year that we went to Sweet 16 with the Silicon Valley Scroots, that was probably the height of my Quidditch career. And it was because I had the opportunity early on to like get those basics. It's kind of off topic from the question, I think, but like, it's really important to invest in your resources and the potential of your resources and not just what is already there.
Awesome. Let's go to Rachel next.
So in my experience, gender in terms of gameplay strategy, like being a woman, when I first started playing Quidditch, I have never been so bored, like on the field, like playing a sport. It was awful. And just like the most common like setup of like three men quaffle players, and then like I would fill that fourth role as the woman chaser, and it just so happens that only three people get guarded, and so you're kind of like put into this role. And I think that it's very possible we've lost so many great athletes because they join the sport, they're put into that role, and they're like, what am I doing? Like, what? Like, athletes want to have the ball in their hand, and they want to score, and they want their team to go to them when in tough situations. And I mean, of course, this varies per team, but if you join the sport and that's what happens, they're going to quit. They're not going to want to play anymore. And so I feel like we're losing a lot of people to that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely a reoccurring problem in the sport. Fabi, if you want to round this one out.
Yeah, I think we're often also not brought into conversations of strategy. I think that a lot of us like have played other sports and we pick up sports strategy and we have ideas on how we can move the ball and change games and, watch different types of like gameplay, and that we're not listened to, that leads to people always playing the sort of same 3 or 4 formations and not sort of widening the scope of everything you could do. Um, when I was playing in Spain, like in Barcelona, they like really like listened to me and they like listened to my, history playing soccer. And I was like, why don't we implement something similar to like the famous sort of tiki taka that Barcelona does? Like we're in that city, let's like make that a thing. And like with that sort of gameplay style, we went to, lower bracket finals at EQC, and it was a team that had never ranked or gone that high. So it's also about listening to experience of your players and like bringing us into the conversation of what strategy can we play, how can we make things different, how can we, again, use your potential, what do you think you can bring to the table. So
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the constant cycle that we're in Quidditch of like female or non-binary player like gets X amount of time on the field and they're just expected to, if they want to stay on the field, they have to do something great, but they get so few opportunities to do something great because not no one, but very few players automatically want to trust them that they're pulled off the field, and we just get into that like off-ball chaser rotation that we see so frequently. And it's like so defeating to, if I have a male couple player on my team versus like myself, if they screw up once, no one thinks anything of it. But when I screw up, it's like the girls on the team can't catch, like period. And that happens so frequently. But like, we'll move on to the next question. We're going to talk, we've already touched on the 4 max rule, but I want to dive a little deeper into that. So Ray, you can start with this, especially because you're on ref team, and just like, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it works? Do you think it's counterproductive, etc.?
I don't have a ton of thoughts on it. I would like to see us move to like a 3 maximum rule, or 3 maximum. I might have messed up the numbers of that. I'm bad at them. Because I do think it would force teams to really think about how we use women and non-binary players on the field. And there are things where like women and non-binary people have been able to explore other roles, but I think that it would expand more on like opportunities, I guess I want to say.
Awesome. Rachel, if you want to go back to you.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I kind of touched on this before, but I think the 4 maximum rule kind of limits like the different ways that you can utilize everyone on the pitch, depending on like who the other team guards. Like if we were to move to like a 3 max rule, and then you're not always going to have a man and woman set as a beater, or you could go with your 2 or 3 women or non-binary chasers. And I think that it just opens up a lot more for strategy. and is just more exciting for women and non-binary and gender non-conforming people on the field. So yeah.
Awesome. We can go to Jeanette next.
So a lot of people are asking about the 3-3 rule, or 3 max rule, not 3-3. And I kind of told them that was coming up, and I thought that this was the question. So I'm just gonna hit on that, if that's cool, since a lot of people are asking about it. For me, the 3 max rule is like fantastic. I would also like to have, you know, a maximum of 3 men on the pitch. Like, let's be real, wouldn't that be nice? But it also limits a lot of small teams. I saw Danny comment, and or I know I have friends on Riff that, you know, it's a struggle to recruit. So it's a struggle to get more than 3 women or gender nonconforming players to come out. So there's like that fine line of knowing, should we make this rule or is it too hard? And it's sometimes hard to get retention or to get recruitment. So I understand that side, but you know, I would love to see the rule. As you said, Lindsay, if it wasn't in place, would they be putting us on the field? The answer is probably no. So if they change the rules, then there's going to be even more of us on the field and even more people staying around.
Agreed. All right, Fabi, you can go back to you to give your take on the 4 max. Oh, you're still muted. There you go. Awesome.
Got it. Just wanted to like answer to something that Jeanette said, which is like, we want to keep 4 max because we don't have enough players, but then when we do get players, we don't put them in. And I think it is also helps build a cycle of, you know, not giving people enough playing time, therefore they get bored. And, you know, again, the whole ecosystem of the sport and making women and non-binary players feel unwelcomed, that also leads to that issue with retention and recruitment. So I think it might be something that we look at more in the future. I don't see a reason why we're not playing with the 4 max rule in the way that the IQA has it, where it's 4-3 on snitch floor, because that forces players to be more creative with how they play on snitch floor. It doesn't default to just the fastest dude running as the seeker. It can also mean that, you know, you give and you train better non-male seekers out to like get on the snitch floor, or you have different combinations while you have this, you know, male seeker out on the floor. So that might be a stepping stone, but I definitely think, and like, if like I'm in the South, I don't have a team currently. If I had a team, I would be building it as a 3-3 team. But I think as a rule overall, I think stepping up to like the IQA rule is the bare minimum we could be doing. So.
Agreed. I was disappointed that transition hasn't happened yet. I realize now that this conversation has been very chaser dominant, and I think that's because that's the role that we all play on the field, which is not perfect. But I do want to take a minute before we move on to the Q&A to talk about beaters. This wasn't planned. I literally just realized this now that we're all a Quaffle group of panelists, but something that I have noticed and has been talked about so frequently in Quidditch is when there's a mixed set of beaters, it's always paired as like Max Havlin's beater partner Lulu, and it's not what Lulu herself is insanely incapable of. And like we've seen that so often, and it's always like, which male beater can we pair with this female beater to make sure that like they're balanced, whatever. But it's not like it's never who can work with this female or non-binary beater. It is always which one of the gender minimum person can work with the male. And that is so blows my mind. So let's discuss that for just a little bit before we move on to the Q&A. I'm trying to also keep up with the chat. There's so much good kind of conversation going on there. So I do want to make sure that we will bring this more to the Slack afterward. But Ray, take it away with this.
Yeah, so I actually consider myself a utility player. I have mostly chased the past few years just because that's what my team needs. But I do remember a fantasy one year where I was beating, and the male captain or drafter or GM or whatever we called it at that tournament was like, you actually play more like a male beater. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I play with my team. Like I I have a role in the beater lineup and it's very specific and I am very good at it. I don't know what a male beater does. I don't know what a female beater does. And I think we've moved past that a little bit in beater strategy. It's more common to use forward beater and back beater, but very often your back beater is your woman or your non-binary beater. And I would just like to see less of that. I would like to see, like us, again, exploring all of the things that we can do as women and non-binary players.
Oh, awesome. Rachel, if you want to speak to your experience playing with different beaters, especially playing like college, club, US national team, like all of those things, like how have you seen their experience and any thoughts that you have on this topic?
Yeah, I've been on teams with phenomenal women beaters like Rachel England. I know that she has had many people say that she plays like a man, and like everyone has a different play style and it's not according to their gender. And so I think that it can be really frustrating because I think that from my perception, because I don't play beater, that women beaters get put into this position and they're kind of the afterthought and they're supposed to kind of clean up after their male counterpart. And I think that's so limiting in both showing off their skills and also developing their skills. And then I think Dallas put in the chat, but like at Pan Am, seeing like Bailey and Hallie play together, both just phenomenal beaters that have play styles that match together really well, and that has nothing to do with their gender. So I think that it's really important that we let women, non-binary, gender non-conforming folk develop their own play style, and that should not be in response to other players on their team. It should be what they're good at and how they'll succeed.
If Jeanette or Gabby have anything to add specifically, please feel free. Otherwise, I want to move on to the Q&A. But if you have a thought, I want you to say it. But
I want to add, from somebody who is a beater in our group chat or in our little chat, Brianna said, as a female beater, I've noticed that most coaches tend to pick a double beater line, as is the stronger line. And so I kind of it started scrolling, so I lost it. But there's so many chats. It's so overwhelming. It's great. But to hit on that, instead of being like, oh, we're going to go for the stronger, why don't you coach up your female beaters or your women beaters? Sorry. Why don't you coach up these people? That's your job as a coach, not to replace them, but to teach them so that next year when your two men graduate and you're stuck with just women beaters that don't have any training or positions on the team, you have somebody. So coach your women. That's the main takeaway right there. Just fucking coach them. Oops, sorry.
It's fine. But yeah, it just seems so simple. I had a friend who was on US national team a few years ago, and she was like an aggressive beater. I think Grace said in the chat how people have been like switching to like the engage beater and the cleanup beater, and she was used to playing the engage beater position and then went to US national team years ago and was expected to play the cleanup position, and she was like, I don't know how to really do this, like this isn't my gameplay style, but she had to fulfill that spot, and it didn't really go well for her. But anyway, we are running out of time. We're going to switch to the Q&A now. There is simply no way we are going to answer all the questions that are going to come up, and there's stuff to talk about. So again, we'll move stuff over to the Slack after. We'll keep this going in the Slack. There's also some Facebook groups to join and talk about these things, and I really want to like always have these conversations. So we can talk about the mistakes, but I'd rather go to the Q&A just because we're running short on time. So I'll add this question to the Slack also, and if anyone wants to answer, they definitely can. But we're going to switch to Q&A. Once I can open it. Oh my God, there's so many questions. Okay, so could you talk more about being coached? How have coaches treated you compared to like a cis male? Let's go back to Rachel for this one. And then I'm gonna bump around to one person each for the Q&A questions.
Yeah, I would say honestly, like if I think about my move to keeper, when I did that my sophomore, junior year, that wasn't because It's gonna sound bad. This isn't because they thought I would succeed at this goal or like at this role. It's because we wanted to put 3 men defensively. And so I felt like I really had to develop my own skills from there. And I think that that's a big problem, like throughout the entire community, is that people don't, you're just put in this role and you're expected to adapt or to be ignored. And it's also really hard as a player to go up to your coach and say, please help me, like coach me, I don't know what I'm doing. And even sometimes that isn't addressed appropriately. Yeah.
Awesome. Next question. In my experience, opportunities to ball carry are readily available to men, but discouraged for women. For example, in drills, a brand new guy can get a quaffle in the throwing line, but women, in my experience, are discouraged from doing so and told to go to the wings. Have you experienced this, and how do you combat this, especially when a coach says not to question the decisions? Baby, we'll go to you for this one.
Yeah, in Spain I played a lot of ball carrying actually because they listened to me and I was like, I played all these sports and this fits into the scheme this way. And then coming back to the US, I was also put in the wings, and it's hard. Sometimes it's a matter of like really taking those like few opportunities you get to carry the ball and like really showing. Like I've like had it times at practice where I'm like running it with the ball and I'm like I've had guys go, oh shit, like, oh, like she can run. And I'm like, yeah, like I have 2 legs. I played soccer all my life. Like, what do you mean? And it sucks because like we have to take like the far and few opportunities that we have and like excel at them. And then we can't fuck up at all because I'm sorry, we can't mess up at all. Because if we do, it means that you're not good. But then like all the million times that you like excelled at something, like don't count for anything. And it really sucks.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Can you explain to people who may not understand why it's so important to use female or non-binary players on the field? How can this open the field up? Can you say from experiences, specific plays, or teams that you've seen play? Jeanette, if you want to talk about this, especially as a coach. Oh, you're muted.
I'll be honest, I zoned out reading the chat during that question. Can you
can you explain to people who may not understand strategy-wise why it's so important to use female or non-binary players on the field, how this can open up the field, and can you speak from experience, specific plays, teams, etc.?
Yeah, so first to speak on Grand Valley's, there was a player on our team, and I'm not gonna shout out anybody, but there's a player on the team who would take the ball and he would run up the field and he would either hero ball or throw it right into the ground. And that was the point where I came up and said, give me the ball, because I can't handle you throwing the ball into the ground every time. So that first step, I actually talked to my coach at Grand Valley once I was a senior, and I was like, I understand strategy and I understand how to throw the ball. I know my weak side is catching. Put me at the ball handler spot. And we did. And then I was able to get back on defense faster because I was also the slower person. So that's where I kind of came up with like, why can't we have the women holding the ball more? Because we throw the one girl behind the hoops and have them run back and forth doing absolutely nothing and just getting tired. And when you have less women on your team, then you're cycling through them faster. So that was my experience on college. Then I went to community, and Nathan Digman and Boom Train coaches, shout out to K-Pack, who like really made me feel great on the team. They actually build up their women players, and they're like, we're going to utilize you because nobody thinks you're a threat. And then you stand by the hoops, you catch it and you dunk, and you're scoring half the points for the team. So it's really important to start utilizing those women. And then maybe that woman chaser starts getting the keeper to pull to the side, and then the guy gets to go and dunk, or the ball handler in a better phrase. But my biggest thing is just, utilizing your women because they are the sneaky threats on your team.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely just think any team will just like, if you see an amazing Quidditch team, they are so often amazing because they utilize everybody on the field. Like if you look at some of the Texas players who have gone through the programs in Texas, there's had so much success because of the way that they utilize everybody on the field. Okay, we'll take this one to Ray next. So it seems like a lot of smaller or newer teams tend to run into issues with low participation from women or gender nonconforming players, which can be seen as more frustrating and discouraging when you're one of the 3 players rotating between the 2 minority gender spots for an entire tournament. What can we do to encourage the retention of female and gender nonconforming players?
I would say that if you are struggling to keep women and non-binary people on your team, you might want to look at your team culture. I didn't attend that panel, so I don't know if they touched on it during the team culture panel, but a lot of times I have not had good experiences with sports or other Quidditch players because like we've mentioned, like they're not valuing me as a player. They're not valuing me as a person. They're not listening to me. Like, is it gender or is it something else? Who knows? But like, take a good look at your team culture and maybe you will find an answer.
Awesome. I'm going to speak on a question that was asked just because I have experience planning an event, but someone asked, what is your opinion on female-only events, Femme Fatale, Queen's Cup, etc.? I was one of the people who planned and coordinated Glorious Bitches Galore in the West, and that event, the amount of love and feedback received from that event, it was something I never, ever, ever expected. So many players got experience doing different things, gaining confidence, like just having playtime on a field for more than just like a middle of a game 3-minute block where they were allowed to play. Like, got to explore different, because it was, I cannot speak to how influential that tournament seems to have not only been for myself, who had to play keeper, and it was terrible, I was so bad at it, but like I highly recommend, if you are someone in your region who has not had one of these yet, to make a way to make it happen as soon as we can play again. It was such a confidence boost for so many players, especially in the college division, who aren't really used to playing new things or kind of being put into that college player box. I love them. I love them. I'm sad that we need them, I guess, if anything else. That's the only downside, is that I'm sad that they have to exist to encourage those types of things. But I just wanted to speak to that because I have a lot of hands-on experience with it. We'll go back to Rachel for this one. So often in Quidditch analysis or conversations with Quidditch friends, female players are compared directly against each other on the basic lens of who is better. When comparing male players, those players are afforded considerations and discussions of their varying strengths, sorted into categories based on their shooting, driving, and are rarely boiled down to a single question of who is a better player. Do you have any ideas on how to fix this analysis and situation?
I mean, I think teams need to utilize their women and gender nonconforming players in ways that do not pigeonhole them into one role, and then they can't be compared in the same way. You have to let those players grow and develop with their own skills. And so that's one, and also just be better analysts, like put in the effort, care, like watch not just the men on the field.
I also think I've always said in this sport that people aren't going to advocate for me, so I'm going to advocate for myself, and saying out loud to anyone who will listen, I accomplished this, 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 and this during that game. Let's talk about more than just the one thing I screwed up. Janet, you have your hand raised.
I just want to add to the analyst part really fast, because I know I was about to end, but I just want to add how Grace was mentioning that, a lot of men are not great at throwing sometimes, and those analytics don't go into stats. So last night in the stats meeting, they were talking about that. Who actually had the turnover? Was it the bad throw, or was the woman gender nonconforming player who didn't catch the bad throw the turnover? And so that's where we need to figure out how to analyze women and gender nonconforming players.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do one more question super fast. We'll give it to Baby. How have male players responded to you in a leadership position? Whether you were as a ref, a captain, coach, whatever. How have your male players perceived that, and how they experienced it?
The one time I was in leadership, I felt respected, and that's why I hold so much love for the Catalan national team and Barcelona Eagles. Because they really listened to me, and they were honestly taking me seriously. I think elsewhere where I've tried to speak up or have tried to take on a leadership position, again, I felt gaslighted, I was just not good enough, or I was told that suddenly I was not the athlete I thought I was. And it's just, man, you just got to listen to people and be open to what other opinions people have, because people are really losing amazing athletes and amazing opportunities when they're not being open to everyone on their team.
Awesome. Okay, so like I said, there's still so many questions that we simply just will not have time for. This panel could have gone on for hours and hours, and we still would have things to talk about. So if you're not already in the Slack, please join it, and like let's continue having this conversation. There's a bunch of resources that we can link, whether it's like BAC to talk about analysis, different Facebook groups, etc. So we will dive into those resources too. So thank you so much for joining us. I wish I could have read all of the chat. Like there's so much happening. I was kept going back and forth between my screens, but you've all been amazing. Thank you for amazing questions. Thank you panelists for taking the time to talk about this like difficult aspect of our lives. And yeah, so this was great, but we can wrap it up and head to the Slack.
Thank you guys. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
I know.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Someone save the chat.
Save the chat.
Give the chat so we can read it because we were talking.
I wanted so bad. Okay.
I zone out
Okay.
when I read. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.